right, welcome back to another episode of the ALP Podcast. I am joined today by Manuel Sierra, our spiritual life coordinator here at the school. And so thank you for being with us, Manuel.
Thanks for having me.
Today we're going to talk about some of the hidden curriculum. Usually when you think of curriculum, you think of your math, your sciences, language. But the hidden curriculum, it's more of what's being as part of the culture of the school, what's being learned on a day-to-day basis. That's not something that you can really do on paper or as an assignment, but it's more about how do we instill our school values? How do we develop that character? And so I thought you'd be a great person to be here on this as you lead a lot of our spiritual life activities. And so I want to ask you one question as we start this. What does it mean to you personally about why is it important to shape a student's life with good character values? But then also, what does it mean for our school that we're trying to incorporate these values as well?
Well, whenever I see these students, whenever I see them interact in their daily basis, and I think about myself. I think about when I was in high school, and I have the ability of looking back in how different things or different situations shaped my character back then, and that even today I see it, right? So going back into my high school days, I was part of like a soccer person and athletic, but also my parents got me very involved in different things, different services, and so that shaped sort of like a empathetic character in me. I was able to empathize with other of my peers back then. I would be able to tutor them, be able to listen to them whenever they had different struggles and stuff like that. And even now today, I see how that is still very true in what I do and what I get involved here at the school. So when I think about shaping character, I think these years are super important, and they're very necessary for us to pay attention and to be more intentional about what you said, about looking into our curriculum and giving them more that extra spiritual emphasis in their lives. Because even at the start of the year, I think we had some course about integrating biblical worldview into our classes, right? And so that is changing as we go on, right? That is changing, that is shifting a little bit how we are doing our curriculum. By the way, do you remember the values? Do you know the values?
I do know the values. I knew that question was coming. We have quality, faith, growth, discipline, and service.
Good. I was just asking.
We're going to touch on those today.
Yeah.
Going back, though, you talk about, you remember when you were in high school. I went to public school. And so a lot of these values that are not just for success now, but as far as success for eternity, like being on a path to following Christ, those were non-existent in high school for me. And so I think back to some of the things we did that we probably should not have done, some of the characteristic things, all of those things do shape who you are. And I'm thankful outside of school, I had a good support network to help keep me grounded, because wherever you're at, you are influenced by it. And so it is important that where you spend most of your time, you are getting the type of influence that holds true to the values that you have. So that is something that I truly appreciate about our school and what we're trying to do here at the school. And so let me just ask you this question. When we talk about our core values that we just mentioned, how does it help shape our students from day to day?
So one of the things that I think is obviously that these values, although we can see them in our Christian faith, like we can see them as core in our Christian faith, they're just core in any belief, system, right? But what we're teaching our students is what the truth, right? The way to the perspective of understanding these core values under the lens of a Christian person, right? And so how do they see discipline as a Christian? How do they act in service, do acts of service as a Christian? And so I believe that is what we are doing at the school. We are being intentional of integrating that biblical worldview of helping students to be able to understand the Christian part, the Christian perspective behind it.
And I would say it's important for everyone to understand why we're intentional. There are a lot of different worldviews out there.
Yeah.
Depending on the worldview, some worldviews do have some positives, but at the end, you look at different worldviews throughout history, and they've all led to chaos in the end because there's a certain void that's left out if it's not a biblical worldview. With the biblical worldview, we first understand creation. And if we understand creation, we understand as humans that we were created for a purpose here on earth. We can find that fulfillment by following what God's word tells us to do. And so I do think it's important for people to understand whatever school you're at, depending on their values, you're going to learn those worldviews. Is that good for you? Each parent, each family has to decide that. But if it's outside of a biblical worldview, it's outside of God's design. And if we're outside of God's design, we're clearly missing what we were created for.
Right. And another thing to add to that is that whenever we're talking about worldviews, that has a direct impact in your behavior, like in your decisions, in what you do, the things you say, the things you watch, or whatever the each student is getting involved in. And so that's why we have to be intentional, right? I mean, there's a Latin American youth program I love to follow, which is E625. The reason why they have that name is because, according to psychologists, 6 to 25 years old is where you build your identity.
That's right.
So if you do a little bit of math, they are with us. Like if they're in the entire school time, they're with us for like 14 years, right? And from 6 to 25, they're with us, 12 years, right? In that like key important moment where they're building who they are. So yeah, we just have to be intentional, and I'm glad we're doing it.
Yep. So let's change directions for just a moment, because if we're talking about incorporating these school values that are aligned biblically, one of the activities we do here at school, we do it each week. I know our preschool, elementary has it on their days of the week. I know here in the high school, we do it on Wednesdays. We do have a chapel for the students. Could you just briefly explain, for someone who's maybe never attended a chapel, what is the point of a chapel? Why do we do chapels?
Yeah, well, if you ask a student, it's just like another time or another slot that we're obligated to be at a place, right? So one of the challenges that I have had personally as a coordinator is, all right, how do we make chapel a little bit more? We have students there just because they have to be there. How do we make it in such a way that it's enjoyable, but at the same time, they also feel challenged spiritually, right?
How do you get them to be engaged, I guess, is the topic.
So we have several things going on, right? It's not only chapel, like it's not only the regular everyone going into the auditorium situation where we also have small groups where we pair students, we group students, boys with boys, girls with girls, and we have them with a male teacher or a female teacher, depending on their gender, right? So that they have smaller discussions, right? And it gets personal, right?
What are some of those discussions they have? I know they'll do like a chapel, but then you'll have one of the Wednesdays set up for these small groups. What's being talked about within those groups?
For example, last time we had a special chapel where we had all of our guys in here, right? And so our focus was about talking amongst guys, understanding that men have a biblical design. We have a godly design, right? And so we've been talking about, all right, how do we deal with different temptations, right? How do we deal as a Christian if you're invited for a drink or something like that? How do you deal with your alone time whenever you're alone with your phone or with your laptop? How do you deal with those moments, right? Because at the end, God is very careful, and he really wants us as a whole, right? He wants us mind, soul, spirit, physically, right? All of us, right? And so those are the things we cover in the chapel, in the small groups, right? We have smaller discussions. So we challenge kids on thinking on their own. I'll be like, why do you think drinking is popular nowadays, right? Why do you think people drink, right? So we get them to think on different ways or different reasons on the why behind things they do, right?
And I think that's important, understanding the why, because the last thing we want to do is say, well, you have to do it because the Bible said so. It's not a good answer. What is God's design for us? And you can look through examples through the Bible. God's design was to not lead you into chaos, not to lead you into sin, but there's life on the other side should you choose it. And so it's important for our kids to see this, because our students are influenced by the things of this world. They are influenced in just different things they watch on TV. I know I've had to be very careful with my 4-year-old daughter, what's coming across the TV, just because I can see something and say, this is clearly against God's design for us. So just going back to that real quick, you know, you had the small groups, you do different themes and stuff in chapel to engage the kids. If a parent wanted to go a step farther, what could a parent do at home with their students in regard to this?
Well, obviously encourage them all the time, right? They can even ask them like, hey, what did you talk about chapel? Like, how was chapel today? Like, what topic did you cover? All right. And probably ask them a little bit more, right? Give them a little bit more insight of the topic. Mostly what we do in chapel, especially in the high school, because high school students can think, right? High school students can think, right? They're at a point where they're very rational, sometimes very irrational, but many of them are very rational, and they have thoughts about all types of topics, right? And so we take advantage of that because we also want them to think about what they're reading in the Bible, right? We challenge them, are like, hey, you're reading about this. Do you really believe it? I mean, you're singing to God, but do you really believe he's your savior? You're saying the words, right? Whenever we're singing, which, by the way, we also have a students leading the band, which is awesome as well. But so we challenge these kids into really owning their faith, right? We challenge them into, all right, I don't believe just because mom and dad believes.
Correct.
I believe because I believe, right?
I know when I used to teach Bible in 6th grade, one point that I would make was, God doesn't have grandkids. You know, God has sons and daughters. And it's important, that is important to understand. Just because I come to this school, that makes me a Christian. That's incorrect. My parents go to church all the time. They serve, so that means I'm good. Incorrect. It is about owning, who do you say Christ is? And so I know that is a unique challenge, but it is what we teach, because each person has to choose for themselves.
Yeah, and just a small comment. When you ask me about like what parents can do, sometimes as a parent, we really want them to believe, right? Obviously, we've grown up like that, and we know that God is our savior. And so we fall into like the legalistic aspect of it. Like, I want my son, I want my daughter to believe, right? And I really liked, I've been watching a couple of videos, and there was a video of a Christian pastor who talked about how his dad was dealing with him. And there was a moment in his life where he had doubts, and his dad was like, sure, you can explore your doubts. But the one thing the dad told him is like, just make sure that you're seeking for truth.
Correct.
Just make sure you're really seeking for truth. You're not just seeking something because you like it, because it's convenient for you. Just make sure you're seeking for truth. And at the end, sometimes us parents have to be okay with that. We have to be okay with students seeking different things, right? But we have to encourage them to always seek truth, right? And so I had this one student who all of a sudden during summer, she asked me like, hey, mister, do you think it's okay for me as a Christian to start knowing a little bit more about Muslims? And I was like, yeah, sure. I mean, I don't see a problem with that. You can know about other religions.
And you should.
There's no problem about that. But just make sure that at the same time you're learning this new religion, make sure you understand why you believe the things you believe, right? And so that eventually helped her growing in her own faith, despite she was actually like, she went to a mosque? I don't know what they call it.
It would be that, yeah.
She went to a mosque and she was actually part of their meetings. But eventually she told me, she kept on telling me, Mister, this has helped me grow in my faith because I started investigating more about why I believe the differences between this religion, the other religion. So I feel that as parents, sometimes we have to learn how to let go a little bit, right? For them to find truth because it's more valuable than to shove truth into them, right?
Correct. No, that's good. So just thinking about our school values, one of them is service. Mm-hmm. One thing that we've highlighted these past few years is doing service trips. Can you share a little bit why do we do service trips, but also what impact has that had on our students?
Yeah, well, obviously service is part of one of our core values, right? But that's not the only reason why we chose to make that change, right? Because before we had this like day off or half a day where we took students for like a retreat, right? And that was good. But I felt that it got to a point where we really nothing was getting into the
We're just
students.
Going to have fun.
Yeah.
We're having a day off from class.
Literally.
What it was.
We're having a day off of class and probably one, maybe two actually listened to the devotionals that were shared. And so sometimes with kids, you got to be creative, right? And one thing I've learned is that the more involved a kid is, the more involved the student is, the more open that student is to learn, right? Sometimes there's more learning in doing than in just teaching it, right? And so these service days were created with that purpose. We wanted students to go out and not only they read about showing love to your neighbors, they read about bringing kindness to others, right? And to helping the poor, helping the widows, right? They read about that. But now they get an opportunity to actually do it.
What are some of the things they've done this past year when they went on their trips?
Yeah, so we've been able to take each grade, right, individually. And so what they do is that they collect food. We have this food collection amongst the entire school. And so we're able to collect all this food. All the help from the parents is amazing. The support that we've had is great. I feel that every year it's more and more. And so that's awesome. And so these kids, what they do is that they bag these up, they bag the foods, right? Because we're going to be donating these bags to a family, right? This past year, I think we were able to reach 125 families.
Now, right? When you say we're donating this food, can you kind of, just little details, what kind of family is it? Like, what does the house look like, right, and those type of things?
Right. Well, we had the opportunity, especially with the seniors at the beginning of the year, they had the opportunity to actually go to the houses, right? And so literally we had houses that were the size of a classroom over here and probably 10 people living in it, right? We had houses that were built with wood, right? And they had that thin aluminum roof, right? They had one stove. probably several kids sharing one room, like 5, 6 kids in one room, probably sharing a bed as well. And so these people that we're helping, I mean, these are people in need, right? And honestly, that, like with the seniors, we went to El Piliwing. That's like what, half a mile from here. So that's so close to. It's the difference in the people who live in El Atillo, right, and have these big houses and have all these different opportunities and have resources, versus just go down a few blocks down the road, you'll find people who are just barely living, right? And so these are the people that we're helping, right? And I think the most valuable stuff that we get out of those service days is that our students are able to interact with these people. We take teachers with them because obviously we have to chaperone them, we have to take care of them, right? But we try to get teachers the least involved possible because we want students to step up. We want students to be the ones showing that love, talking to them, right? Understanding, getting to know them a little bit, right? And there's always the story where we obviously come back and we have like a debriefing of those days, and some of the students share a little bit of what they've learned and the stories they've heard. And almost all of them come back like down to earth. They come back to like changed in their way of looking at life.
And that's also part of the goal too, is not just to help those in need, but it's also for our students to understand God has blessed you with the opportunities that you have by coming to this school, but also being able to do these things. All right, so we're almost out of time, so I just have one final question for you. When our students graduate here after years of getting these school values poured into them, trying to open students' eyes to look through a biblical worldview for why we're here, doing these trips and everything, what do you hope that the students remember once they leave here?
Okay. Well, obviously what our hopes is that they keep on professing their faith if they have already in high school, and they keep on growing in that way, right? Understanding who Jesus is, understanding what Jesus can do in our lives and how we are just a reflection and we can pour into other lives just because of what he has done for us, right? And so our hopes is that whatever that student becomes, right, doctors, engineers, I don't know, marketing, a salesperson, businessmen, women, whatever they end up being, right, that they remember the lessons that were taught here, right, which was Christ died for us, right, for our sins. And his grace is just so amazing that it's not only for us, it's for everyone around us.
And I'd add just one point to that. Ultimately, what we do here during school is not meant to just stay in school. It's meant to take into life. Like you said, Our students go all over the world for college. And we hope they take it because that's what we've been called to do. That's good. So in closing, thank you for those who watched this episode. If you are a Pinaris parent and you might be thinking, what else can I do to work with my kid? How do I reinforce some of this biblical worldview at home? Our school has free access for all of our parents to Right Now Media. It has thousands of Bible studies for parents with youth, studies for parents with younger ages, how to engage your kids in difficult questions, how to use the Bible as a resource. We strongly recommend you use that. And so if you don't have access to that, you're missing out. You can email Manuel at manuel.sierra@pinaris.org, and we can make sure that you have that account set up for you. Please take advantage of that. That's all the time we have today. May the Lord watch over you, bless you, and his light shine before you. Don't forget to like, and we'll see you in our next episode.
Thanks. See ya.